Enter any of the taverns in Skyrim. What noises do you hear? The sound of conversation and laughter, NPCs shuffling around, the crackling of the hearth. For me, almost all of the time, I hear a bard beating their drum, strumming their lute, or gracefully playing the flute. They sing and they dance. They really know how to bring a village or even an entire hold together. A lot of the greats you come across in this game, Sven, Mikael, Lerbuk, Lizette, they likely all got their start at the same place. Maybe not Lerbuk, but it would have been the Bards College, an institute set up in Skyrim's capital in order to nurture, train, and grow the province's next batch of storytellers. I only recently learned that there are quests actually attached to the faction, and today I wanted to embark on those and give my overall thoughts as well as theories on some of the plot points. As per usual, the facts and information provided are brought to you by the game itself and the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages. Starting with enrollment into the Bards College, the journey begins in the city of Solitude. Not too far from the Blue Palace is the campus itself. Just outside of the building, there's usually a pupil of the college who will direct you inside.
Youngest bard at the Bards College, at your service. I'm a bard, from the Bards College here in Solitude. Wanderers like you should think about applying.
That little interaction isn't a necessity, but if you're a completionist like I am, then it'll give you a good peace of mind that it was marked off for your miscellaneous quests. Going on inside of the college, you'll spot a high elf named Yarmo, who's actually the headmaster.
Welcome to the Bards College. I'm the headmaster here. How may I help you? Always a pleasure to meet a prospective bard. You should be aware that many apply, but we accept very few people. When possible, we ask applicants to perform tasks the college needs completed. In this case, I do have a task befitting an aspiring bard. Elisif has forbidden the burning of King Olaf, a festival put on by the Bards College. We need to change her mind. To convince her, I want to read King Olaf's verse, a part of the Poetic Edda, the living history of Skyrim. Unfortunately, the verse was lost long ago. Yes, according to Rjorn, our history's keeper, the portion of the Edda dealing with King Olaf might still exist in Dead Man's Respite. I need you to retrieve the poem.
Definitely a rather tall task for a brand new initiate. When you think about it, here I am, wanting to join a school for poets, singers, songwriters, and musicians, and Yarmo is sending me out to a secluded dungeon in search of an old book. Dead Man's Respite is slightly southwest of Morthal. Arriving at the crypt and going on inside, the first room you'll come across has some peculiar sights. First and foremost, there's a ghost on the other side. It's not hostile though, and in fact, when you lay eyes on him, he can be seen playing the lute. The next thing of interest in the room is a ruby dragonclaw. Picking it up, the ghost vanishes and the real challenge begins. Draugr arise from all corners of the room, and it's time for the player to start fighting their way through the dungeon. The enemies encountered are mostly a mix of regular and restless Draugr. The player will need to navigate their way through an otherwise simple dungeon and avoid a plethora of traps. In case there were any doubts on whether or not you're going the correct way, periodically, you'll witness the ghost from the beginning walking ahead, indicating that it is the right path. As with most dungeons, be sure to loot the treasures along the way, as most of the time, they can add up to a greater value than the final reward. Eventually, the player will come across a corridor that contains a magically sealed door. Following the ghost down another hallway, you'll end up in a small room and need to fight off small waves of Draugr. Once the assault has been stopped, the trapdoor in the middle of the room can be opened. This leads the player to a false wall, and just behind it, we see the story begin to unfold. The ghost from before is sitting in front of a corpse, and the rotten, emaciated figure is gripping the coveted book, King Olaf's Verse. We see that the Draugr's name is Svaknir, something to remember for the future. Other than some gold in its inventory, the only real item of interest is the book. Glancing at the Edda, some of the writing is still legible, but a lot of it has been smudged and faded with time. It's practically incomplete, and who knows how Yarmo will feel about its current condition. In any case, once the book has been taken, you can backtrack through the dungeon and witness Svaknir unseal the magical door. On the other side is another long hallway that leads to a famous wall puzzle. Scanning the ruby dragon claw, the correct disc order is revealed and the pathway ahead can be continued. Eventually, it leads you to an open area, Svaknir is in the center, and it's pretty clear a big fight is about to go down.
Olaf, it is time.
At this point, waves of Draugr begin rising from their seats and challenging the two of you. Svaknir puts up a pretty great fight on his end, and of course, you do what you can on yours.
Arise, Olaf. My vengeance is at hand.
Again, all of the Draugr are either restless or regular, and for lower level players, it might not be a bad idea to stay close to your ghostly companion here, as the restless can overwhelm you, and Svaknir holds his ground pretty nicely. Once the lesser enemies have been defeated, it's time to move on to the big boss.
Olaf. Insolent bard, die!
King Olaf One-Eye is an incredibly powerful foe. According to the USP, he will always spawn in as the most powerful version possible. That could be anywhere from level 7 to level 45. My character is around level 20, and one good hack with his war axe did me in. So, similar to what I mentioned before, it might not be a bad idea to let the already dead Svaknir take most of the heat, while you sit back and perform your DPS duties. Once Old One-Eye has been laid to rest, his body can be looted, which includes a key to the treasury. On the way out, don't forget to grab the Word of Power, Whirlwind Sprint, and to loot the boss level chest. The secret passage leads back out to the entrance of Dead Man's Respite, and from there, you can fast travel back to Solitude. As predicted, Vjarmo doesn't receive the book and its current condition very well.
Sup? Ah, you've returned. How goes the task I gave you? I have to admit I didn't think it would actually be there. Now, let's take a look at this. Oh no, this won't do it all. The copy is incomplete. It's aged to the point that parts are unreadable. And the parts that are readable, well, bardic verse has come a long way since ancient times. It means I can't read it to the court. Without the verse, I won't be able to convince Elisif of the importance of the burning of King Olaf festival. If she isn't convinced of the festival's importance, then she won't reverse her decision to stop the effigy burning. It means that the burning of King Olaf, which the Bards College has held for time immemorial, won't be happening. Make it up? That doesn't seem appropriate. I suppose I could copy his style based on what you brought me, but I have no idea what happened in between these verses. O Olaf, our subjugator, the one-eyed betrayer, death-dealing demon and dragon-killing king, your legend is lies, lurid, and false. Your cunning capture of Numenex, a con for the ages. King Olaf was Olaf One-Eye? He famously captured the dragon Numenex and took him to Dragon's Reach. What did we say really happened?
Here, you can have some fun with the story.
I find that highly unlikely, but the court will love it. I'm writing it in. Olaf grabbed power by promise and threat. From Falkreath to Winterhold, they fell to their knees. But Solitude stood strong, Skyrim's truest protectors. Olaf's vengeance was instant, inspired, and wicked. Strange. According to history, Solitude attacked Winterhold, but Asgeir seemed to be saying Olaf reacted. What do we say happened? No, that's pushing it too far. It's very exciting, but highly unlikely. I can't possibly write that in. It's not the most exciting answer, but the most likely. I'll write it in. It has a few final lines, but that's all we needed to add. I need to head to court immediately and present this. You should come.
With a now completed Edda, Viarmo and the player take a walk over to the Blue Palace. Once inside, you confirm if he's ready to convince the Jarl.
I do hope the court likes the verse. I think we've done an excellent job of recreating it. I think my voice is ready. I hope we've done this well.
From here, all that's left to do is watch the headmaster work his bardic magic.
Ah, Viarmo. I assume you are here to petition for the reinstatement of the burning of King Olaf festival.
I am, Jarl. I wish to present King Olaf's verse from the Poetic Edda, recovered this very day from the Bard's tomb.
You mentioned something that would convince us the festival should take place, but I didn't expect King Olaf's lost verse. Please proceed.
O Olaf, our subjugator, the one-eyed betrayer, death-dealing demon and dragon-killing king, your legend is lies, lurid, and false. Your cunning capture of Numenex, a con for the ages. No shouting match between dragon and man, no fire or fury did this battle entail. Olaf struck a deal to make himself king. Numenex let go, though none tell that tale. Olaf grabbed power by promise and threat. From Falkreath to Winterhold, they fell to their knees. But Solitude stood strong, Skyrim's truest protectors. Olaf's vengeance was instant, inspired, and wicked. Olaf gave orders, Winterhold disguises, an attack on Solitude, total destruction to follow. His men dressed up and then went out to fight, but they reversed Olaf's orders, much to Winterhold's sorrow. So ends the story of Olaf the liar, a thief and a scoundrel. We of Solitude commit to the fire. In Solitude, bards train for their service. They also gather each year and burn a king who deserves it.
You have proven your point, Viarmo. The festival is truly a celebration of solitude and a condemnation of false kings.
I thank you, and the college thanks you, Jarl.
Furthermore, I believe that such a fine poem deserves some payment of patronage. The college will be moderately rewarded.
Oh, thank you yet again. I will make sure our applicant, who was instrumental in recovering the poem, will be well rewarded. Unbelievable! You have done us a great service here. I can't begin to thank you enough. Soon. These things must be done properly. You will be inducted as part of the festival itself. I need you to go speak to Rjorn. He was preparing the effigy of King Olaf. Tell him to finish the preparations. The festival is back on!
Hightailing it back to the campus and finding Rjorn after dusk, the news can be delivered.
Ah, the bard-to-be. Did Viarmo send you? Great! Looks like you'll be one of us soon. We'll gather outside the college for the burning of King Olaf.
Exiting the college through the main entrance, you'll notice that preparations have indeed been made. Both citizens of Solitude and members of the college have gathered in the courtyard. There's food and drink stands, and as expected, numerous performing bards. A little further into the property, NPCs have gathered around a giant straw dummy, held up on a pyre. Viarmo walks over, torch in hand, and delivers his speech.
Welcome, people of Solitude! We of the Bards College are pleased to be here to celebrate the burning of King Olaf. The festival would not have been possible without the dedication and hard work of our latest applicant. With the lighting of the effigy, the last one was a warm-up. He becomes a full-fledged member of the Bards College. Please welcome our newest bard. I think they like you. Yes, congratulations. You are now a full-fledged member of the Bards College. Due to your adventurous nature, several of the college professors have some things they wish you to do. What's more, Elisif has declared the burning of King Olaf should become a weekly event. And finally, there's the matter of the patronage that Elisif wanted me to give you.
Bards College traditions have been restored, new quest avenues have been opened up, and a reward of 800 gold has been given out. The reward is dependent on your level and the verses that you came up with for King Olaf's verse. Thus ends the main quest of the Bards College, Tending the Flames, and now the 3 minor ones can be embarked on. In truth, the next 3 miscellaneous quests are all fetch quests. I would deem the one dished out by Rjorn the most interesting of the 3, so I'll leave that one for last. First though, we'll deal with Ingi Six Fingers.
It makes me sad whenever I think about it. Oh, sorry. My mind wanders sometimes. I was just thinking about Finn's lute. Over a year ago, thieves broke into the college and made off with a lot of valuable things, mostly gold and silver. But they also stole Finn's lute. We just learned where the bandits fled to, and I very much want that lute back. Finn was the bard who invented the 8-course lute that is commonplace today. Until he found a way to string the extra courses, bards only had 6-course lutes. The lute they stole is Finn's original 8-course lute. I doubt they even realize its true value.
In my opinion, Finn's lute is the easiest of the 3 miscellaneous quests. Stony Creek Cave is in the far eastern reaches of Skyrim. Arriving at the dungeon and going on inside, it's clear from the dead body that the cave's occupants are still around and still not friendly. Quickly into the expedition, you'll begin to come across bandits of all sorts. Regulars, thugs, and outlaws. The cave itself mostly consists of small corridors and narrow walkways. After taking a side path and crossing over a trap, you'll enter a tight room that contains a boss level chest. In that boss level chest is Finn's lute, among some other minor items. Again, like mentioned before, there really isn't much to this specific miscellaneous quest, and not much to tell. A handful of bandits and a couple of traps. In my case, the trickiest part to this mission was traveling over to Stony Creek Cave. Loot and inventory, you can travel back to the campus and present it to Ingi Six Fingers.
What? You did? Oh, sweet divines, you did! There is no way I can pay you what this loot is worth, but I can teach you a few things that I've learned over the years.
The reward is perhaps much better than the usual chunk of change, and I will say, is the silver lining to all of these fetch quests. For this specific one, you gain 1 point to all stealth-based skills, so alchemy, light armor, pickpocketing, lockpicking, sneak, and speech. For the second mission, we'll have a chat with the next teacher, Pantea.
That damn fool! I should wring her neck. Lorena. That fool student of mine stole my flute and sold it to some necromancer. I just got a ransom note for it. That flute has been handed down for 17 generations. Well, don't just stand there. Go get my flute! Apparently, Lorena told him some story about the flute being able to make the dead dance. It's just a flute. A really old and valuable flute, but just a flute.
Quite demanding, and again, not really afraid to send an aspiring poet off into a dangerous dungeon. Hobbs Fall Cave, the location of the flute, is a short distance east of Dawnstar. Arriving and going on in, it doesn't take long until you find your first enemy. Hobbs Fall Cave is inhabited by necromancers, as foreshadowed by Pantea, along with their undead minions. The dungeon itself is significantly larger than the previous one, Stony Creek, and the player can certainly tell the difference in difficulty. It isn't necessarily challenging, but the vast number of spellcasters make it a more tedious and methodical run. The final area contains 3 necromancers, and similar to the last fetch quest, they're level dependent enemies. The highest form of necromancer I encountered was a necromage, and I'm sure without the help from my spectral assassin, I would have had a much trickier time. I think because this quest was fairly surface level, and in my opinion, longer than it needed to be, it was my least favorite of the 3. Of course, Finn's lute was pretty dumbed down too, but it was over and done with rather quickly. Once the resistance here has been beaten, Pantea's flute can be retrieved from the boss level chest at the back of the room, and the shortcut back out into Skyrim can be taken. Fast traveling over to Solitude, the instrument can then be handed over to Atea.
It's been my honor to perform at the Blue Palace on many occasions. His late lordship was quite the admirer.
Solitude.
That's it!
Seat of
Wonderful!
the
I knew
King
I
of
could count on you.
Skyrim.
I don't have any money to give you,
Slaying
but I can show you a few tricks I learned playing for the Winterhold Wizards.
Again though, the reward makes it all worth it, as this time, Pantea teaches the player some valuable lessons in the schools of magic. A +1 point to alteration, conjuration, destruction, enchanting, illusion, and restoration. The last fetch quest is given out by Rjorn.
They found it. They actually found it. Rjorn's drum. Nobody knows where he died, and therefore where his drum might be. Haldir was the missing link. Rjorn entered Haldir's cairn in secret and presumably died there. Now all I need to do is find someone to get it. Wait, you. You could do it. I need you to get me that drum. You're joking, right? Rjorn, only the most famous battle drummer of the Second Age? Well, famous among bards at least. That drum has been in half a dozen famous battles. It's a priceless artifact. Rjorn was always looking for new stories to tell. It seems he was writing a lay about Haldir when he vanished. That was the missing clue.
Like mentioned before, I personally feel as though this is the most interesting one of the three. Haldir's cairn is located just southwest of Falkreath. Upon going inside, you'll see quite the strange sight. A blue beacon of light is shooting up from a cairn, and surrounding the stone formation are several bodies. The corpses seem fresh, as their blood still stains the rocks, and they haven't decomposed yet. The names of the three adventurers are Rjorn, Agrias, and Vidgrod. That's important to know, as near the cairn on a pedestal is the key to Haldir's crypt and Agrias' journal. The journal reads as follows: "Never thought I'd see the day we were run out of the Knife Point gang. Least the storm should cover our tracks. Vidgrod, Raid, and I took shelter in a cave for the night. Looks like there's an old ruin here. Least there are no Draugr around. Vidgrod and Rjorn both want to set up here for a while, maybe do some raiding. They ought to know better. The road's deserted, especially this time of year. Plenty of better places up north, but they seem awfully insistent about staying here. Wouldn't even lend a hand when I went out to hunt tonight. Something's wrong. Rjorn hasn't said a word since she woke up this morning, just keeps staring off into space. Vidgrod isn't much better. They sick? Not like any illness I've ever heard of. I just walk out on them, but I can't seem to get up the nerve. I feel like something's holding me back. What is this place? We're not alone. I can hear him now. Someone speaking in my mind. Old, powerful. Haldir, that's the name. He wants something from us. Needs us to stay for the magic to work. I tried to run. Can't, just like them. Rjorn jumped first, onto the cairn. That's what Master wants. Blood, sacrifice, power to live again. His magic, I can feel it pulsing in my blood. He's draining us. We'll serve him soon. Our bodies, our souls. Just like the others, they're waiting. It's my turn." Certainly an ominous piece of text, and it foreshadows that a great foe lies ahead. Going forward, the enemies are mostly ghosts with a few Draugr thrown into the mix. Nothing particularly that challenging, and a majority of the dungeon could be sped through. Not too far in, you'll come across a small circular room that contains the cave's one and only puzzle. It's a simple one though, as all you need to do is match up the totems on the inner column to the symbols on the outer wall. After a little more traversing and dungeon crawling, you'll soon end up in the final room. The blue beacon from the cairn below can be seen emanating into the space, and upon getting close, Haldir, the ancient Nord, spawns in, and the battle begins. The first phase of the fight has a translucent Draugr overlord taking on the player. For my case, I was able to overwhelm him before he could do much, and was then quickly moved into the second phase. This causes 3 different apparitions of Haldir to appear, each using one of the elements as their main source of attacking. Once each version of the Nord has been defeated, it's on to the final phase of the fight, which isn't too dissimilar from phase 1. Once Haldir has been utterly defeated, his body can be looted. In my case, I was lucky enough to experience the glitch where a copy of his staff drops on the ground, and another copy can be found in his inventory. From here, the boss level chest at the back of the room can be accessed, and Rjorn's drum can be retrieved. The blue beacon that was over the cairn is gone, and the trapdoor can be used to escape from the dungeon. Like mentioned before, this one is my favorite of the three because it feels like there's some effort put into it. A mysterious glowing cairn surrounded by dead bodies, a journal to set up the suspense, and then a boss fight to follow. In my eyes, it beats the standard dungeon crawl of Hobbs Fall Cave, which really just deals with fighting through waves of necromancers. It also beats Stony Creek Cave, but that one is shorter, and at least Bethesda spared us of some misery for it. Once back outside, fast travel back to Solitude and present the instrument to Jermaine.
At last! I have searched for this drum for 20 years.
The college treasury is a bit thin right now, but I can show you some tricks I learned from my days with the army.
Jermaine's reward is a 1-point increase to all combat-oriented skills, so archery, block, heavy armor, one-handed, smithing, and two-handed. That wraps up the quests that directly deal with the Bards College. Now, let's quickly go over the ones involving the faction in any capacity. The first of the two is a Radiant Delivery quest. By seeking out the NPC, Adonato Leotelli in the Candlehearth Hall of Windhelm, the player can embark on a small journey for him.
I'm a writer by trade, not that the people of Skyrim do much reading. I write drama, friend. The legends and history of Skyrim made to excite and inspire. Poor Jermaine at the Bards College has been waiting for my latest work, Olaf and the Dragon. For weeks now, roads are a mess. You're sure? When you see Gerard, ask for a tip. I'm sure he'll be in a good mood after reading this.
The quest really is quite simple, and all you have to do now is hand the book over to Rjorn in Solitude. Now, I wanted to take a moment to read through it, as it's a pretty interesting read, helps shed light on events that have just transpired, and helps us come to new conclusions. Olaf and the Dragon reads as follows. One of the more colorful legends in Nord folklore is the tale of Olaf One-Eye and Numinex. Long ago, in the First Age, a fearsome dragon named Numinex ravaged the whole of Skyrim. The dreadful drake wiped out entire villages, burned cities, and killed countless Nords. It seemed that no power in Tamriel could stop the monster. This was a troubled time in Skyrim's history, for a bitter war of succession raged between the holds. The Jarls might have been able to conquest the beast if they had worked together, but trust was in desperately short supply. A skillful warrior named Olaf came forward and promised to defeat the beast. In some accounts, he is the Jarl of Whiterun. In other versions of the legend, Olaf promises the people of Whiterun that he will capture the monster if they will name him Jarl. At any rate, Olaf ventures forth with a handful of his most trusted warriors and seeks the beast out, eventually finding Numinex in his lair atop Mount Aethor. Needless to say, it's an epic battle. First, Olaf comes at the dragon with his axe and his shield. Some variants of the legends say that Olaf and the beast battle with blade and claw for days, but were too evenly matched to gain an advantage. Most accounts hold that Olaf, perhaps frustrated that his weapons are completely ineffectual against the dragon, finally casts them aside. Giving voice to the rage that has been building within him, Olaf unleashes a terrible shout. Here again, the stories diverge. Many accounts hold that Olaf did not realize he possessed the power of dragon speech, while others suggest that he had long possessed this gift, but wished to test himself against the dragon in martial combat first. Virtually all variations of the legend, however, agree on what happens next. Using the awesome powers of the dragon language, Numinex and Olaf engage in an epic shouting duel atop Mount Aethor. So forceful are their words, they are said to shatter the stone and split the sky. Finally, Numinex collapses from a combination of injury and sheer exhaustion. Somehow, and this detail is conspicuously absent in virtually every account, Olaf manages to convey the dragon all the way back to the capital city of Whiterun. The people of Whiterun are suitably impressed with Olaf's hostage. They build a huge stone holding cell at the rear of the palace, which they rename Dragon's Reach. This enormous cell serves as Numinex's prison until his death. Olaf himself eventually becomes the High King of Skyrim, putting an end to the War of Succession. Presumably, his great deed made him the only leader upon whom all the people could agree, and so the land once again has peace. As a visitor to Skyrim, I find this tale both fascinating and highly entertaining. It is one of the most celebrated legends of the Nords, and one can easily understand why. It's a story of surpassing heroism in which a resourceful and worthy Nord does battle with a truly terrifying adversary and emerges victorious by yelling him into submission. The only way in which this could have been even more of a Nordic tale would be if Olaf beat Numinex in a drinking contest. The legend is not without its doubters, however. The bard, Svaknir, who lived during Olaf's reign, wrote and performed an alliterative verse that challenged Olaf's version of events. Enraged, the High King threw the rebellious bard in prison and destroyed all written copies of the verse. How I would love to lay hands on a copy of that verse. I admit I am immensely curious to know what assertions Svaknir made about how Olaf really defeated Numinex. There are a few ancient bard texts that provide one possible answer. These tomes suggest that Numinex was particularly foul-tempered because he was extremely old. In these accounts, the dragon spends his final years terrorizing the countryside before flying off to the top of Mount Aethor to die in peace. When Olaf finds Numinex, the dragon is too weak to defend himself. Olaf and his men capture the beast without effort, but decide to take advantage of the situation by fabricating a heroic tale. It is worth noting that all of Olaf's warriors who were said to witness the shout duel went on to become wealthy leaders during Olaf's reign as High King. However, it is equally likely that Svaknir had some grudge against Olaf, and his scandalous verse was an attempt to damage the High King's reputation. Alas, we will never know. I leave you now, good reader, with this gentle reminder. A good historian must remain impartial and consider all points of view. Time has a way of distorting our record of events, so the closer you can get to the original sources, the better. Now, we already know of the tensions between Svaknir and Olaf, and perhaps the story is a little more complex than it seems. We'll get into it in just a bit, but for now, I wanted to wrap up the quests. Bringing the book back to the college, it can be handed over to Germain for a reward.
Ah yes, Adonato's new work. Shorter than I expected, but words must be judged on merit, not length. I'll look over this later. Why don't you take this for your trouble?
The second and last mission dealing with the Bards College is another Radiant quest, and it deals with rare gifts. By approaching Lammy, the vendor over at Thaumaturgist's hut in Morthal, you can learn more about her alchemical skills.
I picked up the trade when I was a girl. One of the temple healers staying here on a pilgrimage showed me the basics. She had a book with her, Song of the Alchemists, that I used to read over and over. I miss having a copy. Really? I'd be happy to show you a bit about herbs if you find the book.
From here, the book's location is, surprise surprise, at the Bards College. It can be found on a counter on the main level, and taking it is considered stealing, so be sure to do it discreetly. The Song of the Alchemists is a skill book, so there's a nice little bonus thrown in for the player. The book isn't necessarily lore-ridden, but it is an entertaining read with a fun message at the end. When King Moranian's alchemist had to leave his station, after a laboratory experiment that yielded detonation, the word went out that the king did want a new savant to mix his potions and brews, but he declared he would only choose a fellow who knew the tricks and the tools. The king refused to hire on more fools. After much deliberation, discussions, and debates, the king picked two well-learned candidates. Lanthipus Minthurk and Umphatic Fair, an ambitious pair, vied to prove which one was the best. Said the king, there will be a test. They went to a large chamber with herbs, gems, tomes, pots, measuring cups, all under high crystalline domes. Make me a tonic that will make me invisible, laughed the king in a tone some would call risible. So Emphatic Fair and Lanthipus Minthurk began to work, mincing herbs, smashing metal, refining strange oils, cautiously setting their cauldrons to burbling boils, each on his own sending mixing bowls mixing, sometimes peeking to see what the other was fixing. After they had worked for nearly 3/4 an hour, both Lanthipus Minthurk and Umphatic Fair winked at the other, certain he won. Said King Moranion, now you must taste the potions you've wrought. Take a spoon and sample it right from your pot. Minthurk vanished as his lips touched his brew, but Fair tasted his and remained apparent in view. You think you mix silver, blue diamonds, and yellow grass? The king laughed. Look up, Fair, up to the ceiling glass. The light falling makes the ingredients you choose quite different hues. "What do you get?" asked the floating voice bold, "of a potion of red diamonds, bluegrass, and gold." "By Dwemer God," said Fair, his face in a wince, "I've made a potion to fortify my own intelligence." Publisher's note: this poetry is so clearly in the style of Gorfellam that it really does not need any commentary. Note the simple rhyming scheme of AABBCC, the sing-song but purposefully clumsy meter, and the recurring jokes at the obviously absurd names, Emphatic Fair and Lanthipus Minthurk. The final joke that the stupid alchemist invents a potion to make himself smarter by pure accident would have appealed to the anti-intellectualism of audiences in the interregnum period, but would certainly be rejected by the Dwemer. Note that even Mirabar Sul refuses to name any Dwemer gods. The Dwemer religion, if it can even be called that, is one of the most complex and difficult puzzles of their culture. Over the millennia, the song became a popular tavern song in High Rock before eventually disappearing from everything but scholarly books, much like the Dwemer themselves. Like mentioned before, certainly a fun read, but the publisher makes an effort in disproving the claim that this would have had any place in Dwemer culture. They also really make it a point to bring down the bard who originally wrote this ballad, criticizing the simplicity of the rhymes and the comedy. This story seems like was more so an attempt to capture the audience's attention with the allure of the dwarves. As to the common folk, their history, culture, and lifestyle was a grand mystery. Book in hand, it can be brought to Lammy, and she has a reward for the player.
It's amazing how much you can learn from a book. Here, let me show you some of the things the temple healers taught me about potions.
With another skill point added to alchemy, that's a wrap on all of the quests that feature the Bards College. As pointed out by the UESP, there's actually a cut quest that was theorized to take place after Tending the Flames was completed. It's called Collecting the Edda, and it would have had the player traveling across the province, chatting with fellow bards, and recording their experiences of Skyrim into one grand Edda. The only journal entry we have for it says, "Collect parts of the poetic Edda from bards you meet." This could have included musicians and poets like Mikael from Whiterun, Sven from Riverwood, as well as the whole cast of characters over in Solitude. It sounds like it could have been the best quest for the faction, as it deals with less dungeon crawling and more with the artistic, glorious side of the Bards College. With all of the quests out of the way, let's talk about my experience and thoughts with the school. I don't really know what I was expecting from the Bards College, but to be honest, this wasn't it. I suppose I thought there would be less fighting and sneaking and more performing and creating. I expected something similar to Morrowind's Mournhold side quest, A Star is Born. You put on a show, the crowd loves it, and if Bethesda really wanted to get spicy, they'd throw in some twist. I wouldn't have even been opposed to a similar system that's found in Fable 3, where you're pressing buttons to the tempo of the song. Even the cut quest, Collecting the Edda, sounds a lot more interesting than most of what we ended up getting. This felt like their chance of straying away from the usual rule and gruel of fighting, sneaking, killing, and dungeon crawling, and towards a more passive experience that involves mostly speechcraft and personality. It's unfortunately not really what we got, and for that, it loses some major points with me. I do understand that a lot of Bards' tales come from their own experiences, so in a way, adventuring, questing, getting into danger, etc. is all part of the gig, but either way, you don't even really get to do much with those moments other than receive gold and skill points. First, let's talk about Tending the Flames. This is the only quest where I thought the creativity was actually there. We learn of an ancient tradition that's been sidelined due to the recent death of High King Torrig. The members of the college believe that now more than ever, municipal customs and traditions should be honored and embraced. Through this, you, the player, get sent to a crypt in order to retrieve a missing piece of history, the compelling piece of evidence that Viarmo needs in order to persuade Jarl Elsif to greenlight Skyrim's version of Burning Man. On this journey, you come across Svaknir, a bard of old, as well as King Olaf One-Eye, the Nord who's honored by this whole tradition. It would seem that through the preceding events and who you end up battling, Svaknir's account of Olaf gains traction, and the possible true story comes to light. Through some ad-libbing and enhancements, the story of King Olaf's verse is read to Jarl Elisif, and the burning of King Olaf is brought back. This time though, in a way that feels like it's mocking Old One-Eye and praising the brave storyteller, Svaknir. Now, before I mention that we'd be circling back to Adonado's book, Olaf and the Dragon, This book helps us get a better grasp of what actually happened between Olaf and Numinex, the event that led to his stardom. There's no disputing that Olaf and his men brought Numinex back to Dragon's Reach. That claim to fame still stands. The true contest, however, comes from the manner and how he subdued the beast. The king's groupies say it was due to his powerful Thu'um, while the naysayers deem it was due to Numinex's decreased strength in old age. Unfortunately for the player, any possible truth was wiped out with Svafnir's King Olaf's verse, as the version we find is mostly unreadable. Adonato says that King Olaf might have been trying to suppress the truth and as such destroyed Svafnir's work. He also says that Svafnir could have very well harbored a grudge against Olaf, and the verse was written in order to tarnish the king's reputation. If anything, the answer to what actually happened may lie in the middle somewhere. The fight likely was not as epic as the tale decrees it to be, but bringing a dragon back to Dragon's Reach is no small task, regardless of the beast's age. I struggle to find the timeline of Dragonren, so take this with a grain of salt, but who's to say that this Dragonbane of a Thu'um wasn't used in the capture of Numinex, much like the last Dragonborn does with various other dragons in the 4th era. Perhaps Olaf and his men were vague on the details of the battle, the other bards of Skyrim filled in the blanks, and Svafnir set out to find the truth. Again, what that truth is, we don't know and likely never will. Now, as for who I believe, to be honest, I lean to be more on King Olaf's side. The game pretty much puts you on Svafnir's side throughout the whole thing, and maybe that's the biggest clue of all that I'm wrong. However, because we don't have all of the information, something in my gut tells me that there's more here than meets the eye. Adonato's book specifically tells the reader to remain impartial and explore the facts while casting doubt on Svafnir's motives. This feels like an intentional breadcrumb left in by Bethesda to tell the player, hey, there's more going on here than what you think. Perhaps the biggest factor for me is the fact that we run into King Olaf One-Eye in Sovngarde during the main questline. Of course, there are a variety of requirements needed to enter the Hall of Valor, and Olaf has a rather successful career once he's High King, but I don't think Shor would allow a liar and a cheat to gain entry. I think only a few beings know of what truly went down between Olaf and Numinex, and Shor was one of them. Whatever Shor saw, Shor liked, and thus allowed him to gain entrance to the Hall of Valor. Of course, you could put in the counter-argument that Olaf's later deeds overrode his former ones, and that placed him in the favor of the gods. All we can do there is agree to disagree. To wrap up the final 3 quests, finding the instruments of old, I pretty much described how I felt about them before. They're not very creative fetch quests. Finding Rjorn's drum was entertaining and had some lore surrounding it, but at the same time, it's just not what I wanted out of the Bards College. I would have preferred to have seen some infinite radiant speechcraft related quests with bards in taverns, perhaps helping them with their songs or creating new ballads for them. I think Bethesda missed a great opportunity here, and because of that, the Bards College questline, if you can even call it that, doesn't sit very high up with me. The reward was pretty nice though, getting all of those extra skill points. If you're in it for the end result, and not necessarily for the story or gameplay, I can understand why you might really enjoy this series of quests. Simple dungeon crawls that lead to increased levels in almost all of your skills. As for the delivery and rare gifts quests, I don't count those as necessarily being Bards College themed missions, and they more so just involve members of the faction as well as items found at their HQ. However, the texts provided were very entertaining reads, with one being good fun and the other shedding light on past events. With that, I'd love to hear your thoughts down below, and until next time, keep on adventuring.